Welcome to Star City Sports. I'm Dustin Hoffman.
And I'm Rachel Hofstra. We're talking about all things sports today, but first we have a developing story in Lincoln.
A Lincoln middle school teacher has been arrested for sexual assault. Star City's Kelsey Murphy has more live.
22. Not turn. It all happened. Jackson Hendrick did not turn himself in. It all happened like this. A student from another school confronted her social worker at another school where she contacted the Lincoln Police Department. From there, it took them under 2 hours to confront Jackson Hendrick.
Jackson Hendrick is passionate about two things, music and teaching. Just out of college, this 22-year-old is a social studies instructor at Irving Middle School. Lincoln police arrested him last night, charging him with sexual assault.
We need to talk about a very disturbing situation that has happened in Lincoln Public Schools.
On March 16th, a student reported information regarding Hendrick's relationship with one of his own students. She is only 14 years old. The next day, police arrested Hendricks for enticement by electronic communication device. The evidence is in the messages.
And found that some were lewd, sexual in nature.
On March 18th, police confirmed Hendrick's sexual contact with the teenager. He received his second citation, first-degree sexual assault. The case is ongoing, and officials say it's possible that this 14-year-old is not the only one. Lincoln Public Schools want to assure parents they are keeping their students safe.
If there's something that keeps us awake at night, it's when a child feels unsafe or is being bullied or, in this case, something much worse.
They are encouraging students not to keep information like this to themselves.
What we teach children all the time is that if you think or you hear or you witness something that's inappropriate, get it to a responsible and trusted adult.
At Hendrick's arraignment this afternoon, his bond was set at $200,000. In order to get out, he has to pay 20% of that, or else he'll end up here, the Nebraska State Penitentiary. Reporting live for Star City News, I'm Kelsey Murphy.
Thanks, Kelsey, for the update.
And in case you missed it today, start pulling out those brackets to see if you're still in it.
Here's a recap of the tournament so far today. Notre Dame opened the tournament with a great game. They beat Northeastern 69-65. Iowa State wasn't as lucky as they got upset by 14 seed UAB. March Madness has begun.
Another Big 12 team was also upset by a 14 seed. The Baylor Bears were taken down by Georgia State as they hit a deep three to seal the victory. Arizona rolled over Texas Southern 93-72.
The 6th seed Butler Bulldogs defeated the 11th seed Texas Longhorns by 8. The UCLA Bruins won against SMU Mustangs 60-59. The Nebraska women's basketball team takes off to Columbia, South Carolina for the first round of the NCAA tournament. They earned a 9 seed with a 21-10 record and face Syracuse tomorrow night at 6:30 Central. If they win that game, they have a chance to face 1 seed South Carolina.
With star player Rachel Terrio out since February, the team has slowly been struggling to stay competitive with the upper-level teams.
Yeah, and it's been difficult for them. They've gone 5-5 since the injury. It'll be interesting to see how they compete in the tournament.
And that is exactly what Brent, Devin, and Michael are debating at the roundtable.
Welcome to our roundtable discussion. I'm Brent Bonfleur. For the 4th year in a row, the Husker women's basketball team is going dancing. As you just heard, the Huskers drew a 9 seed and they'll take on Syracuse tomorrow night on ESPN2. To talk about the Huskers' chances in the tournament, I'm joined by Devin Cleach and Michael Shively. And Devin, give us your thoughts on this first round matchup for Nebraska.
It's going to be a tough matchup for Nebraska. Nebraska struggled towards the end of the year, going 5-5, like they said, with losing Rachel Terrio to an injury that really hurt Nebraska. She was their star player, a preseason All-American, and now they have to go up against Syracuse, who is a very solid team. They have Alexis Peterson. She averages 15.7 points per game, but she had 34 against Wake Forest in the loss. And so now they have to go play them, and then they're looking towards South Carolina, which might not be that good for Nebraska.
Michael, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? If the Huskers do win, there's a pretty good chance that they will face South Carolina in the next round, a 1 seed, Any chance the Huskers could pull the upset there?
Yeah, Brent, you're right. It is a tough matchup, and there's always that chance for the Huskers that they could be a Cinderella team. They could pull the huge upset, but it's going to be really difficult against South Carolina. The Gamecocks may be the best team in the nation. They only have 2 losses on the season, one of those to UConn, who's a perennial national championship contender. They go 9 deep on the bench. One of Nebraska's weaknesses is they don't have that bench power, especially
Right.
with Terrio out, and South Carolina certainly does. They win games by an average of 23 points per game. It'll be a very difficult contest for the Huskers if they're looking to make it to the coveted Sweet 16.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, guys, great stuff. Thanks. Coming up next, we catch up with a former Nebraska basketball player, see who, after the break.
Nebraska basketball team was struggling from the third three-point line this year.
They could have used the help from Ryan Anderson, who left after being ranked in the top 10 in three-pointers made and three-point percentage for Nebraska. Here's Tanner Westerholt, who caught up with the former star.
Hi, I'm Tanner Westerholt, and I spoke with former Nebraska basketball player Ryan Anderson. After graduating in 2010, Anderson went on to play for 5 different leagues, including a stint with the NBA D-League. Anderson joined teams in Germany, Netherlands, and Canada. I asked him what was different playing overseas compared to the U.S.
You have to wear that American patch on your jersey. It's even the less respect. Like they get to foul more, they get to push more, they get to play more physical, and it's like, you just want the same respect, but so you got to play through a lot of that stuff over in those countries. Very physical.
When he's not on the court, Anderson keeps up with another unique talent.
And also, I do music and stuff too, so I kind of try to go to local. I go to local music stores and stuff like that, and go in there and play instruments and do stuff like that, and whoop up on my teammates in 2K.
How motivated is Anderson in singing? Well, he's more concerned about his real dream.
But right now, I'm kind of dedicated to pursuing my dream of playing the NBA. But I still do the music stuff on the side, sing some songs, especially at the schools and stuff like that. They find out that I can sing, and they ask me to sing some songs and Christmas carols and stuff like that.
When asked about the new facilities Nebraska added for basketball, Anderson was quite jealous.
I had to share the shooting machine with the girls, so I would be like, hey, are you using it? Are you done? I would have to wait for them. And I know now they have separate gyms, right? The girls and the men's basketball team, they have separate facilities. I really think players, when we were in college, could have really benefited from that.
When his basketball playing career comes to an end, Anderson still wants to stay on the court.
Step on anybody's toes or anything like that, but I had dreams. I had dreams one day of maybe being the head coach of Nebraska.
Anderson is currently playing for the Windsor Express in the Canadian League, and his team just reached the second round of the playoffs. Now let's go back to Dustin and Rachel.
It was good to hear from Ryan Anderson. He did a lot for Doc Sadler in this program.
It's good to see that he's still in the game.
The Husker baseball team finished up a 2-game series with Indiana State, and it was a sweep. They improved to 14-6 on the season and are riding a 7-game win streak. This weekend they face Michigan for their Big Ten opener. Next week during spring break, they face Cal State Fullerton twice and finish up a 3-game series against Texas.
The Huskers just finished their 7th spring game practice yesterday, and things are looking pretty solid, but still a little shaky in execution, as the team is still adjusting to the new coach. Tommy Armstrong sat out of yesterday's practice because of back spasms, but it's just a minor injury and shouldn't keep him off the field for long. The team will be back at it tomorrow in full pads, and all this practicing will be leading up to spring football game on April 11th. It is expected that Memorial Stadium will be back with 51,000 tickets already sold. And one of the best ways to follow sports is via social media. Doug's been doing that all day, and he's here to catch you up.
I'm Doug Lowry, and these are your social media updates for the day. Jim Boeheim held a press conference today and announced that he will be retiring in 3 years. The Orangemen had a down year, going 18-13, even though they weren't eligible for postseason play. ESPN writer and funny man Bill Simmons took to Twitter today to share his thoughts on the situation at Syracuse. He rattled off a few tweets. My favorite of the bunch, The Jim Boeheim situation is high comedy. I'm sorry we cheated so many times. As a punishment, I'm retiring 3 years from now. The NFL has league meetings next week, and teams are allowed to propose new rules they want to add to the discussion. Some of the new rules proposed: the Detroit Lions want to create a rule that allows penalties to be reviewed. The Chicago Bears want to make it reviewable to see if the play clock expired before the snap. My Bears also want to propose a rule that gives both teams a possession in overtime, because scoring a touchdown is no longer an indication of winning. We would be remiss if we didn't mention how crazy Twitter and Facebook have gone for the first day of the NCAA tournament. With UAB beating Iowa State, basically anyone who filled out a bracket freaked out. Social media became a platform for people to voice their frustration over busted brackets. That's going to do it for your social media updates for the day. Remember to follow us on Twitter at Star City News 15. For Star City Sports, I'm Doug Lowry. Let's send it back over to Dustin and Rachel at the anchor desk.
So how's that bracket looking? Any upsets planned?
Yeah, mine's falling apart already, but the biggest one I have is Buffalo over West Virginia in that 5-12 matchup. And Mike will have more on the art of the 5-12 upsets.
Thanks, guys, and welcome to the Numbers Game. I'm Michael Shively. The most fun part of March Madness is cheering for and picking upsets. And there's one matchup that always brings excitement, the infamous 12-over-5 upset. 12 seeds have won 8 out of the last 12 games. Given the trends of other tournament matchups, 5 seeds should win 72% of their games, but they've only won 59% since 1995, leading some to think 5 seeds are jinxed. Whether it's a jinx or not, it's smart to pick a 12 seed over a 5 seed every year. For me, I like Wyoming over Northern Iowa. I'll be back later for more Numbers Game, but now back to Dustin and Rachel.
Well, I wish I would have known that before I made my bracket.
Yeah, the hardest of picking the upsets is really picking which one's going to happen.
And now bouncing from basketball to football, let's head to the roundtable with Brent, Devin, and Doug.
Welcome back to the roundtable. I'm Brent Baumfleur. Concussions in the NFL have caused plenty of controversy. Things really boiled over in 2013, resulting in a successful $765 million lawsuit by former players. But the issue isn't going away. Last week, former San Francisco 49ers linebacker Chris Borland retired after just one season in the NFL. Borland had 2 concussions in the past, but none since he'd been playing in the league. He said concern alone caused him to call it quits. Here to debate the issue with me, I am joined once again by Devin Cleach and now by Doug Lowry. And Doug, we'll start with you. We've seen players retire due to concussions and injuries. Former Titans quarterback Jake Locker, he's a good example. Do you think this is a trend that will continue to grow?
I don't think with what happened with Chris Borland will be a trend. This is a guy who hasn't had a concussion since high school. But we've seen players that are willing to retire if they think their health is at risk. Sidney Rice a couple years ago had some concussion issues. He was a wide receiver for the Seahawks. Even in all the way back to the early 2000s, in 2001, Robert Smith, a great running back for the Minnesota Vikings, who had just had a 1,500-yard season, decided to retire citing knee issues, and he said, "I'd rather walk away from the game now than limp away from it later." So it's going to be interesting to see guys moving forward if they're going to decide to be retire based on injury history. But for a guy like Borland, where he doesn't really have that history, I think you're going to see less and less of that.
Yeah, Devin, you heard Doug's argument. Do you think that playing in the NFL is worth the risk of these long-term injuries and even, as we've seen with former players, suicide and death?
It's really honestly up to the player. The player's got to make the decision. They start playing, pee-wee football. They're really young kids, and then they make their way up to high school and college, and, some don't even make it to that NFL level. But if you're going to continue to play in your football career, you got to be able to make the decision, is this the right thing for you or is it not? And those players, like Chris Borland, made that decision for himself.
All right, that's all we have time for right now. Thanks, gentlemen. Coming up next on Star City Sports, Michael Shively will tell you whether or not this is the year that a Sweet 16 seed upsets a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
With these warmer temperatures, Husker fans are saying that it is perfect baseball weather.
So I bet you're wondering, what is perfect baseball weather?
We'll dive into the science behind Mother Nature and America's pastime. With its northwest to southeast orientation, Hawks Field offers a challenge to its players. Husker games generally start in the early afternoon, meaning that the sun angle will be 45 to 65 degrees above the horizon. It also means that it'll be directly in the players' eyes. A few things players can do to block out the sun include wearing sunglasses, wearing eye black, as well as blocking out the sun with their glove.
With temperatures high at the ballpark, that makes these concessions behind me a hot commodity. But what does that mean for the players? Well, the only thing on their mind is how far they can hit the ball. And the name of this game is air density. The less dense the air is, the farther the ball will travel, which means on a humid 90-degree day, a ball can travel 10 to 20 feet further than on a dry 50-degree day, which is the difference between senior Austin Darby hitting a fly ball for a potential out or a home run.
The wind always seems to be blowing in Nebraska, but how does it affect the flight of a baseball? NASA physicists concluded that even a 5-mile-an-hour wind can alter the flight of a baseball by 10 feet. Why? Air friction is the reason. Air friction can either hinder or enhance the flight of a baseball, depending on which way the wind is blowing. However, an MLB study concluded that wind has no effect on a baseball at all. So, who to believe? Well, it's up in the air. For Star City Weather, I'm Cody Carlin.
And I'm Emily Lockermeyer.
Now, if you excuse us, we got a Husker game to watch.
And now, a look at the forecast with Star City Weather.
Good evening, Lincoln. I'm Casey Caranda with your forecast. Let's take a look outside. It is currently about 51 degrees. We do have some clouds out there, but those are disappearing pretty quickly. We do have a little bit of a breeze, but not too strong. A beautiful ending to our day. As we take a look at our almanac, our high was 55 today, just a little below or above average, which is perfectly fine. Our low was a couple degrees below this morning, but nowhere near that low of -3 we had back in 1923. As we take a look across the state, generally 60s, upper 50s through 60s on the western half of our state, while here on the eastern portion where we did have those clouds stick around for a little longer, we are in 40s and 50s. Omaha is at 48. As we take a look at tonight, 31 mostly cloudy. We are going to have a little bit of a breeze, but we are going to have some clouds, which is going to keep our temperature up a little more, which will bring us into tomorrow. It is going to be sunny, maybe a few leftover clouds in the morning. From tonight, 73 is going to be our high. We are going to have a little bit of a breeze from the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, but a perfect beginning to spring. And on Saturday, 65 Sunday, it is going to be 70 with just a little bit of a chance of rain, our first chance actually for this spring season. Monday, 57, there's a little bit of a cold front going to be moving through, and then into Tuesday, going to be a little bit of rain. And that's your forecast. Back to Dustin and Rachel.
Thanks, Casey. Basketball isn't the only tournament that's underway today. Wrestling opens up tonight, and Nebraska placed 9 guys into the tournament. Every weight class but 149 earned a spot. Robert Kokish is undefeated and Nebraska's lone top seed. The Huskers finished 7th in a stacked Big Ten tournament and look to finish in the top 10 of the NCAAs.
The Golden State Warriors continue their reign at the top of the NBA with a 54-13 record. They took the second-place Hawks to the woodshed last night, 114-95. After the bad start to the season, LeBron and his Cavs have climbed all the way back to second place in the East, with Toronto right behind them in third. The Heat, Bobcats, and Pacers are fighting for the last 2 spots in the Eastern Conference, but all have losing records. And the West is dominating once again with 10 teams that have a winning record. Memphis has sustained the number 2 spot all year, while the Spurs are getting back to championship form, but are still in 7th place. The Thunder and Pelicans are battling for that last spot in the loaded West.
The NFL Competition Committee proposed 23 changes to rules and procedures. Some of the proposals are things like having personal foul penalties available for instant replay review, putting fixed cameras on all boundary lines, and adding bonus field goal for an additional point after a successful 2-point attempt. The NFL will be debating all of these next week. These changes could be huge and are definitely something you want to keep an eye on.
Now we're going to take a quick break from sports.
We have David Gass with your national news stories.
My name's David Gass with your National News Update.
3 were killed and 4 were injured in a convenience store drive-by that officials are calling the worst mass shooting in the recent history of Stockton, California. According to witnesses, nearly 40 shots rang through the store late last night. Police will continue to investigate the shooting. There have been no arrests made at this time. Without surprise, a popular mobile app claimed victory to an age-old tradition. Uber cars have officially outnumbered the yellow taxis in the Big Apple. While customers boast about the simplicity and convenience of the app, a representative from the Taxi Commission said that while they may be outnumbered in vehicles, taxis continue to provide almost 14 times the rides of Uber. Voting may become mandatory, according to a recommendation made by Obama during his speech in Cleveland earlier today. The idea came about when he was asked how he plans to offset the influence of big money in politics. Obama said that with mandatory voting in place, we could apply a concept already used by other countries to level out the playing field. That's all I have for you today. With your national news, I'm David Gass.
Thanks, David. Now we're back to sports.
Let's go to Michael Shively with the numbers game.
The NCAA men's basketball tournament is famous for its unpredictability, but one thing has stayed constant and predictable amid the madness. A 16 seed has never beaten a 1 seed. Well, that's about to change. 1 seeds win by an average of 23 points, giving them around a 99% chance of beating the 16 seed. There have been 116 1 versus 16 games, so the underdogs are overdue for a win. Secondly, there are actually 16 seeds after the addition of more play-in games. This means that 2 16 seeds are the quality of 15 seeds from the past. And those 15 seeds are way more successful than their 16 seed counterparts, boasting 7 wins since 1985. With the quality of 16 seeds higher, 1 seeds better watch out or become a victim of the numbers game.
Who knows? We've had so many upsets already. Maybe this year will be the 16 seeds' chance.
And after this break, we'll give you a preview of tonight's games. I bet everyone has been keeping an eye on the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, the games have been going strong, and there's more to come tonight.
The 8-seed Cincinnati Bearcats face the 9-seed Purdue Boilermakers. A.J. Hammonds looks to do damage in the post for Purdue, and they were considered a bubble team, but got a favorable seed to many.
Stephen F. Austin is one of the more popular picks to pull an upset in the 5-12 matchup. As we have seen today, anything is possible. Utah will try to avoid being the next team to go down.
The number 1 overall seeded undefeated Kentucky Wildcats take on 17-17 Hampton. Hampton beat Manhattan in the opening round to be fortunate enough to face this Kentucky team. Some people are saying this may be the best team in college basketball history.
Georgetown was one of the teams who was given a higher seed than expected and also has a bad reputation for being upset. This makes Eastern Washington another trendy pick. NCAA tournament tomorrow will be right down the street in Omaha, hosting teams from all over the nation.
Big names like Kansas and Wisconsin will be there, along with Wichita State, Indiana, and others. One of the more interesting matchups that could happen in the second round would be the 2 teams from Kansas. You can check out all the matchups on our Facebook page at Star City News 15. Those games in Omaha are over $350 a ticket.
Man, you have to be a die-hard fan to pay that much.
And Brent is back at the round table to discuss the tournament.
Thanks, you guys. It's that time of year, 64 of the best college basketball teams all vying for a chance to call themselves champion. The bracket is set, and to discuss the tournament, I'm joined by Devin Cleach and Tanner Westerholt. Now, guys, it was pretty tough to fill out my bracket this year, but picking the champion was not so tough. Devin, we'll start with you. Any chance that Kentucky does not finish the season undefeated and win the championship?
You know, Kentucky, they've been unreal this season, going undefeated. But the last team to go undefeated and win the national championship was Indiana back in the 70s. So it's going to be a tough quest for them to finish it. I think they get upset at one point. They play in the SEC, not as great of a competition. So they might struggle a little bit getting to that national championship game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they can make it all the way. Now, Tanner, there are, of course, those teams, we talked about them already on the show, that pull those Cinderella-type upsets. Who are some teams you're looking at to pull some of those major upsets, maybe upset Kentucky?
Well, the 2 major teams I'm looking at for pulling off the upsets, one is the 13th seed Eastern Washington. They're facing a great Georgetown team They're led by Tyler Harvey. He led the country in points per game this year. They're also 3rd in the country in points per, so they can really get out and score some points. My second team you should look out for, of course, it's Stephen F. Austin. All right, they face Utah in their first matchup. They are 9th in the country in points per game. They're also 1st in assists, and also they're 5th in field goal percentage. So they can shoot high-quality shots and make it. They are led by a dominant post duo in Walkup and Parker, and they also won 28 games out of the last 29 games they've played. So they are harder. They are hot, just not as hot as Kentucky, but they're really interesting to watch.
Yeah, pretty impressive stuff. Now, finally, guys, Nebraska didn't make the tournament this year after making it last year. Disappointed a lot of people. But looking forward to next year, Devin, what do you think? Do you think they make it back?
Well, Nebraska has the chance to retain Terran Petaway, and if they do retain him, that will be a good chance for Nebraska to develop their team because they have everyone else returning besides a few big men, and they're getting a very good recruiting class in as well. So it will help out Nebraska, and they do have a chance to make it back.
Your thoughts?
Well, Nebraska should have a great shot. They return 90% of their team, plus they're adding Andrew White, plus a top 25 recruiting class with Ed Morrow. So it's very going to be interesting to watch.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Good luck with your brackets. And now back to Michael Shively with the numbers game.
Number 7 seed Michigan State is the most interesting team in the tournament field. The Spartans were preseason 18th in the nation, but have 11 losses on the season, including bad losses to Texas Southern and Nebraska, which should make them a popular upset pick. But you can't overlook an important number, the Tom Izzo factor. Izzo's Spartans have made the tournament the past 17 years, making it out of the first round an unreal 13 times. Izzo's trademark is getting his teams to peak in March. This month, the Spartans have exclusively played teams in the tournament field, and they beat all of them except an overtime loss to Wisconsin. Maybe the reason the team is excelling in March is their veteran leadership. The top 5 scorers on the Spartans team are juniors and seniors, and they're getting hot at the right time, making the Spartans a dangerous 7 seed in the East region.
I agree, Michigan State always gives people trouble, but my national champion this year is who they lost to in the tournament in Wisconsin.
You know, it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens, but I'm going to pull for Kentucky this time. So be sure to tune in for your sports and news at Star City News. Our next show will not be until March 31st. I'm Rachel Hofstra.
And I'm Dustin Hoffman. Have a good night.